I never thought a piece of paper could destroy everything I'd built. But there I was, sitting in a lawyer's office, staring at the prenup I'd signed 5 years ago, realizing I'd handed my mother-in-law the weapon she needed to take my children's entire future away from me. Let me back up. When I met Ryan, I thought I'd hit the jackpot. Tall, charming, successful. He worked at his family's investment firm, drove a Tesla, and treated me like I was the only woman in the world. We met at a charity gala in Boston, one of those fancy events where champagne flows and everyone's wearing clothes that cost more than my monthly rent. I was there with my best friend who'd dragged me along, and honestly, I felt completely out of place in my borrowed dress. But Ryan saw me. Really saw me. Within 6 months, we were engaged. I was a kindergarten teacher making $38,000 a year, and he was pulling in 6 figures easily. But he always said money didn't matter, that he loved me for who I was. His family's wealth was just a bonus, not the foundation of our relationship. Then I met Patricia. Ryan's mother was everything you'd imagine when you picture old money. Perfectly coiffed blonde hair that probably cost more to maintain than my car payment. Designer everything. That smile that never quite reached her eyes. She looked at me during our first meeting like I was something she'd stepped in at the country club. She said, and I'll never forget this, "So you're the little teacher who's captured my son's heart. How quaint." Quaint. Like I was a novelty item he'd picked up at a yard sale. But Ryan defended me, told her I was going to be his wife whether she liked it or not. I loved him even more for that. I thought we could handle anything together. The prenup came up 3 months before the wedding. Ryan brought it up over dinner, looking uncomfortable. He said, "Babe, I need to talk to you about something. My mom's insisting on a prenup. It's just a formality, family tradition. You know how it is with old money families." I felt my stomach drop. Not because I was after his money, I genuinely wasn't, but because it felt like he didn't trust me. Like I needed to prove I wasn't a gold digger. He must have seen my face because he grabbed my hand and said, Hey, this isn't about us. This is about making my mother feel secure. You know how she is. The prenup is totally reasonable, I promise. It just protects family assets that were mine before we got married. Everything we build together is ours. I'd never try to screw you over." I wanted to believe him so badly. The prenup arrived a week later. 47 pages of legal jargon that made my head spin. I sat at my tiny kitchen table, trying to read through it, but honestly, it was like reading a foreign language. Words like irrevocable trust and marital property division and fiduciary responsibility swam before my eyes. I should have hired my own lawyer. God, I should have hired my own lawyer. But I was young, I was in love, and I was intimidated. Ryan's family attorney was this imposing man named Harold Whitmore, who wore suits that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. He walked me through the prenup in his corner office overlooking Boston Harbor, speaking in that condescending tone lawyers use when they think you're too stupid to understand. He said, "It's quite standard, Miss Chen. You retain all assets you bring into the marriage, he retains his. Any jointly acquired property during the marriage is split equitably. There are provisions for spousal support based on length of marriage. Very fair, very reasonable." I nodded along, pretending I understood every word. Then he flipped to page 32 and said, almost as an afterthought, "And of course, there's the family planning clause, standard in the Morrison family contracts." Family planning clause. It sounded so innocent, so reasonable. I skimmed the section. It talked about children born during the marriage, inheritance rights, trust fund allocations. There was a sentence that read, "Any children born of this union shall be subject to family approval and adherence to family values and traditions to maintain full inheritance rights and trust fund eligibility." I remember asking, What does family approval mean exactly? Harold smiled that patronizing smile and said, "Oh, it's just ensuring that children are raised with appropriate values. The Morrison family has certain standards for education, religious upbringing, that sort of thing. Nothing that would concern a devoted mother like yourself. Nothing that would concern me." Right. I signed on page 47, next to Ryan's signature. My hand shook a little, but I told myself it was just wedding jitters. Our wedding was beautiful. Patricia spared no expense, probably because she wanted to show off to her society friends more than celebrate our union. 300 guests, a venue that overlooked the ocean, a dress that cost more than my car. I felt like Cinderella, except the fairy godmother hated me. The first few years of marriage were actually happy. Ryan was attentive, loving, supportive. We bought a gorgeous house in Newton, one of those historic colonials with the wraparound porch and the perfect lawn. I kept teaching because I loved it, even though Patricia made snide comments about how I didn't need to work, how it was embarrassing that a Morrison wife had a job. Then I got pregnant with Emma. I was over the moon. Ryan was ecstatic. Even Patricia seemed pleased, probably because it meant the continuation of the precious Morrison bloodline. Emma was born on a sunny May morning, perfect and healthy and absolutely everything I'd ever dreamed of. I'd never felt love like that before, this overwhelming, all-consuming need to protect this tiny human. Patricia showed up at the hospital with a lawyer. Not Harold this time, but another one from the family firm. A woman named Diane something. She came into my recovery room while I was still exhausted from 18 hours of labor, holding my newborn daughter, and she had papers. She said, "Congratulations on the birth. We just need you to sign some documentation regarding Emma's trust fund and inheritance rights." I was too tired to argue, too overwhelmed. Ryan was there and he said it was fine, just formalities. I signed where they told me to sign. Big mistake, huge mistake. 2 years later, I had our son, Lucas. Same thing. Patricia showed up with lawyers and papers, and I signed because I was exhausted and hormonal, and I trusted my husband. Life continued. The kids grew. Emma started preschool, then kindergarten. Lucas was a wild, energetic toddler who kept me on my toes. Ryan worked long hours at the firm. Patricia inserted herself into every aspect of our lives, always with that smile that never reached her eyes, always with suggestions that felt more like commands. She'd say things like, "Emma really should be enrolled in Montessori, not that public school program. Morrison children have standards." Or, "You're still breastfeeding Lucas? That's a bit excessive, don't you think? We used formula in our family." Or my personal favorite, "I've arranged for Emma to start piano lessons with my instructor. Every Morrison child learns classical piano." I pushed back sometimes, but Ryan always mediated, always tried to keep the peace. He'd say, "Just let her have this one thing, babe. It makes her happy, and it's not hurting anyone." Except it was hurting. It was death by 1,000 cuts, this constant undermining of my authority as a mother. Things started falling apart on Emma's 6th birthday. We'd planned a party at our house. Nothing fancy, just her school friends, some pizza, a bounce house in the backyard. Normal kid stuff. Emma was so excited. She'd been talking about it for weeks. Patricia showed up the morning of the party and said, "I've taken the liberty of canceling your little gathering. Emma will be having her party at the country club instead. I've invited the appropriate children from appropriate families." I stared at her. "You did what?" She smiled that cold smile. "Darling, Morrison children don't have pizza parties with random children from public school. There are standards to maintain. I've already made all the arrangements." My blood boiled. "This is my daughter's birthday party. I planned it. She wants it here with her friends." Patricia's smile didn't waver. "And I'm sure you meant well. But you don't understand how things work in this family. Emma needs to socialize with the right sort of children. It's for her future. I looked at Ryan, waiting for him to back me up. He looked uncomfortable, torn. He said, "Mom, maybe we should have discussed this first." Discussed? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Ryan, she canceled our daughter's party." Patricia interjected smoothly. "I'm simply ensuring Emma's proper development. According to the family planning provisions, I have certain rights regarding the children's upbringing and socialization." Those words, family planning provisions. Something cold settled in my stomach. I said, "What are you talking about?" She looked at me with something like pity. "Dear, did you not read the prenuptial agreement? Or the trust documents you signed when the children were born? The family has certain rights regarding child-rearing decisions to ensure the children maintain their inheritance eligibility." The room started spinning. "Ryan?" He couldn't meet my eyes. "It's not as bad as it sounds, babe. It's just, the family has always had certain traditions." I canceled my plans that afternoon and went straight to a lawyer. Not Harold Whitmore, not anyone associated with the Morrison family. I found a family law attorney named Sarah Brennan, who had a small office in Cambridge and a reputation for taking on difficult cases. I brought every document I'd ever signed. The prenup, the trust paperwork from when Emma was born, the similar documents from Lucas's birth, papers I'd signed about education decisions, healthcare proxies, all of it. Sarah read through everything with an increasingly grim expression. Finally, she looked up at me and said, "Mrs. Morrison, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. You've signed away significant parental rights." My heart stopped. "What?" She pulled out the prenup, flipped to that section I'd barely glanced at 5 years ago. "This clause here, about family approval for children, it's not just about values and traditions. According to this language, combined with the trust documents, Patricia Morrison has been designated as the co-decision maker for all major parenting decisions. Education, healthcare, religious upbringing, even where the children live." I felt like I couldn't breathe. That can't be legal. It's unusual, but it's not illegal. You signed these documents voluntarily, and more importantly, the children's inheritance, their trust funds, everything that would be theirs from the Morrison family fortune, is contingent on adherence to these provisions. "How much money are we talking about?" Sarah checked the documents. "According to this, each child has a trust fund currently valued at approximately $12 million, set to be accessible when they turn 25. Additionally, they're named as beneficiaries in the family estate, which is substantial. We're talking generational wealth. $12 million each." I couldn't even process that number. Sarah continued, "But here's the thing. If Patricia determines that the children are not being raised according to family standards, or if you violate these agreements, she has the right to dissolve the trusts and remove the children from inheritance consideration entirely." "She can just take their inheritance away?" "According to these documents, yes, and there's more." Sarah flipped to another section. "If you divorce Ryan, or if the marriage ends for any reason, custody arrangements default to what's in the best interest of maintaining the children's connection to the Morrison family legacy. Patricia could argue that the children should live primarily with Ryan, or even with her, to ensure proper upbringing." I thought I was going to be sick. "I signed away custody of my own children?" "Not exactly, but you've made it very difficult to fight for primary custody without jeopardizing their financial future. Any family court judge would have to consider the fact that going against these provisions would cost your children millions of dollars." I started crying right there in her office. Ugly crying, the kind where you can't catch your breath. I'd been so stupid, so trusting, so naive. Sarah handed me tissues and waited for me to calm down. Then she said, "Here's what I think is happening. Patricia Morrison is establishing control. She's testing boundaries. The birthday party thing was a power play. She wants you to know that she's in charge. What can I do? That's complicated. These documents are legally binding. You could try to challenge them, argue you signed under duress or without proper legal representation. But that's an uphill battle. The Morrison family has unlimited resources for legal fees. You're a kindergarten teacher, married to a man who works for his mother. How long could you afford to fight? She was right. I was trapped. I went home that night and confronted Ryan. Really confronted him, no holding back. I said, "Did you know what was in that prenup? Did you know your mother would have legal rights over our children?" He had the decency to look ashamed. I knew there were provisions about the kids' upbringing, yeah. And you didn't think to explain that to me? To make sure I understood what I was signing? You wouldn't have married me if you knew. His honesty shocked me. I stared at this man I'd loved for 7 years, the father of my children, and I didn't recognize him. I said, "You're right. I wouldn't have. Because I would never agree to let your mother control my children's lives." "She doesn't control their lives, Mel. She just wants what's best for them." "What's best for them?" "Ryan, she canceled Emma's birthday party. She didn't ask. She didn't discuss. She just did it. And you let her." He ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. "It's not that simple. The family has expectations. Emma and Lucas are Morrison heirs. They have responsibilities, standards to uphold. They're 6 and 4 years old. They're children. They should be playing with friends and eating pizza and being normal kids." "They're not normal kids, though. They're worth millions of dollars. Their futures are set. All they have to do is follow the family guidelines." I felt like I was talking to a stranger. "Listen to yourself. You're talking about our babies like they're business investments. That's not fair. What's not fair is that your mother has more legal rights to my children than I do. What's not fair is that you tricked me into signing away my parental authority." He got defensive then. "I didn't trick you. You could have read the documents. You could have hired a lawyer. You chose to sign." He was right, and that made it so much worse. I had chosen to sign. I'd been stupid and trusting and in love, and now I was paying the price. The birthday party incident was just the beginning. Over the next few months, Patricia inserted herself into everything. She enrolled Emma in an exclusive private school without consulting me. She fired our pediatrician and hired her own. She bought Lucas a wardrobe of designer clothes and threw away all his regular kid clothes, saying they were inappropriate for a Morrison child. Every time I objected, she'd smile that cold smile and remind me about the family planning provisions. Every time I asked Ryan to intervene, he'd say I was overreacting, that his mother just wanted to help. I felt like I was losing my mind, and worse, I was losing my children. Emma started talking differently, using words and phrases that didn't sound like her. She'd say things like, "Grandmother says we don't associate with children from common families." Common families. My 6-year-old was using the phrase, common families. When I tried to correct her, to teach her that everyone deserves respect regardless of their background, she'd look confused and say, "But grandmother says the Morrison family is special. We have responsibilities." Lucas was too young to be fully indoctrinated yet, but I could see it starting. Patricia bought him expensive toys and told him they were because he was a Morrison, because he was better than other children. I was watching my kids turn into miniature versions of Patricia, and I was powerless to stop it. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in October. I picked Emma up from her new private school, and she was crying. Really crying, the kind of sobbing that breaks your heart. I pulled over and asked her what was wrong. She said, "Grandmother says we might have to go live with her because you're not raising us right." My blood turned to ice. "What?" She said, "You don't understand Morrison family values." She said Daddy might need to make different arrangements for us. I drove straight to Patricia's house. One of those massive estates in Brookline with the circular driveway and the fountain. I'd always felt intimidated coming here, but not today. Today, I was a mother protecting her children. I didn't knock. I walked right in and found Patricia in her sitting room, having tea with some society friends. I said, "We need to talk. Now." She looked at me with that infuriating calm. "Melanie, I'm entertaining guests. Whatever this is can wait." "No, it can't. You told my daughter she might have to come live with you. You scared her. She was crying." Patricia sighed like I was being tedious. "Ladies, if you'll excuse me. Family matters." Her friends left, giving me judgmental looks as they passed. I didn't care. Once we were alone, Patricia's mask dropped a little. "Sit down, Melanie." "I'll stand." "Suit yourself." She poured herself more tea, taking her time. I didn't mean to upset Emma. I was simply explaining reality to her. She's a bright child. She should understand her situation. Her situation? She's 6 years old. She doesn't have a situation. Of course she does. She's a Morrison heir with a mother who is actively working against her best interests. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm her mother. Everything I do is in her best interests. Patricia laughed. Actually laughed. Is it? Is it in her best interest to attend public school with children who will never be her equals? Is it in her best interest to be raised with middle-class values when she's destined for so much more? Is it in her best interest to have a mother who resents her family's wealth and privilege? I don't resent the wealth. I resent you using it to control my children. She set down her teacup with a sharp click. Let me be very clear, Melanie. Those children are Morrison heirs first, and your children second. Their futures were determined before they were born. You can either get on board with that reality, or you can be removed from the equation. You can't take my children from me. Can't I? She pulled out a folder from the side table. I've been documenting everything. Every time you've contradicted family decisions. Every time you've undermined Morrison values. Every time you've put your own desires above the children's futures. I have witnesses, documentation, evidence of your unsuitability as a mother to Morrison heirs. My hands were shaking. I'm not unsuitable. I love my children. Love isn't enough. Those children need guidance, structure, proper education in their roles and responsibilities. You're a kindergarten teacher from a middle-class family. You have no idea how to raise children of wealth and privilege. They're just kids. They need love and stability and a normal childhood. They're not just kids. They're the next generation of one of Boston's most prominent families. And if you can't understand that, if you continue to fight against what's best for them, I will petition for custody, and I will win. I felt tears burning my eyes. Ryan would never let you take them. She smiled. Ryan will do what's best for the family. He always has. He married you despite my objections. He gave you a chance. But if you prove to be an impediment to the children's proper upbringing, he'll make the right choice. The Morrison choice. I left her house shaking. I sat in my car in that circular driveway and called Sarah Brennan. I said, "She's going to try to take my kids. What can I do?" Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "The truth? Not much. Not without giving up their inheritance. And even then, it would be a brutal custody fight. Patricia Morrison has unlimited resources, connections to every judge in Boston, and documentation that you've been violating the family planning provisions. A court might actually side with her, especially if Ryan backs her up. So, I just let her have them? Let her turn them into little robots who think they're better than everyone else? Or you play the long game. You document everything too. You be the best mother you can be within the constraints of the agreements. You wait until the kids are old enough to make their own choices. Emma's 6 now. In 12 years, she'll be 18. She can decide then who she wants to be. 12 years. 12 years of watching Patricia poison my children against me. 12 years of biting my tongue and following her rules. 12 years of being a prisoner in my own life. I couldn't do it. That night, I told Ryan I wanted a divorce. He looked shocked. What? Why? Because of my mother? Mel, we can work this out. Can we? Can you honestly tell me that you'll choose me and the kids over your mother? Over the family money and reputation? He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know. I said, I want out. I want to take the kids and start over somewhere she can't control us. You can't take the kids. The prenup? Screw the prenup. They're my children. They're my children too, and they're Morrison heirs. You can't just take them away from their family, their inheritance, their future. What about their right to be kids? What about their right to choose their own path? He looked at me with something like pity. They're 6 and 4, Mel. They can't choose anything. We have to choose for them. And I'm choosing their financial security. Over their happiness? Their happiness will come from security, from knowing they're provided for, from being part of something bigger than themselves. I moved into the guest room that night. I called Sarah Brennan the next morning and told her to start divorce proceedings. She warned me. This is going to get ugly. Patricia will fight for custody. She'll use every resource at her disposal. And the prenup is very clear about what happens in the event of divorce. You'll get spousal support for a limited time, but the children's primary residence will be determined by what's in their best interests, which the court will interpret as maintaining their connection to the Morrison family. So I'll lose them. You might get shared custody, weekends, maybe. But Patricia will argue that you're an unfit mother, that you're trying to separate the children from their heritage out of spite. And she might win. I felt trapped. Completely, utterly trapped. But then something unexpected happened. Ryan's sister Claire called me. Claire had always been nice to me, but distant. She'd married a guy from another wealthy family and moved to Connecticut. We saw her maybe twice a year at family gatherings. She said, I heard about the divorce. I need to talk to you, in person. Don't tell Ryan or Patricia. We met at a coffee shop halfway between Boston and Hartford. Claire looked nervous, kept checking over her shoulder like she expected Patricia to materialize out of thin air. She said, I know what she's doing to you. The control, the custody threats, all of it. She did the same thing to me. I stared at her. What? When my kids were little, she tried to take over, use the same legal provisions. I fought back, and she made my life hell. She turned Ryan against me, turned my own husband against me for a while. She threatened to cut my kids out of the family entirely. What did you do? Claire leaned forward. I found the loophole. There's a clause in the family trust documents, buried deep. It says that if a Morrison heir can prove undue influence or coercion in the establishment of family planning provisions, they can petition to have those provisions nullified. My heart started racing. How do I prove that? You need evidence that Patricia pressured Ryan to include those provisions in the prenup. Evidence that she's using them for control rather than the children's genuine welfare. And you need testimony from someone inside the family. Like you? She nodded. Like me. I'll testify that this is Patricia's pattern. That she uses these legal provisions to maintain control over her children and grandchildren. That it's not about the kids' welfare, it's about her power. For the first time in months, I felt hope. Sarah Brennan was skeptical at first, but when she saw the clause Claire had found, she got excited. We started building a case, documenting every instance of Patricia's overreach. Every time she'd made decisions without consulting me. Every time she'd threatened to take the children away. Claire provided emails and text messages from years ago when Patricia had tried to control her children. Evidence of a pattern of behavior. We filed a motion to nullify the family planning provisions of the prenup and the trust documents, citing undue influence and coercion. Patricia went nuclear. She hired 3 law firms. She filed counter motions claiming I was an unfit mother. She had Ryan served with papers requesting emergency custody of Emma and Lucas, claiming I was mentally unstable and a danger to the children. The legal battle was brutal. Depositions, hearings, evaluations. They sent a child psychologist to interview Emma and Lucas. They had investigators following me, documenting everything I did. Patricia's lawyers painted me as a gold digger who'd trapped Ryan into marriage and was now trying to extort the family. They brought up every mistake I'd ever made, every time I'd been late picking up the kids, every B grade Emma had gotten on a spelling test. But Sarah fought back. She showed the pattern of Patricia's control. She had Claire testify about her own experiences. She brought in experts on family law who testified that the provisions in the prenup were unusually controlling and not in the children's best interests. The trial lasted 3 weeks. 3 weeks of sitting in a courtroom while lawyers dissected my entire life. 3 weeks of watching Ryan sit on the opposite side of the room, next to his mother, looking at me like I was the enemy. The worst part was when Emma testified. She was 7 by then, old enough to be interviewed by the judge. They asked her who she wanted to live with. She said, in this tiny voice, "I want to live with Daddy and Grandmother. They understand what it means to be a Morrison." I wanted to die right there. But then the judge asked, "What about your mother?" Emma's face crumpled. "I love Mommy, but Grandmother says if I choose Mommy, I won't be a Morrison anymore. I'll lose everything." The judge's expression changed. She asked, "Did Grandmother tell you that?" Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. "She said I have to choose, family or Mommy." That was the turning point. The judge ruled in my favor. She found that Patricia had exercised undue influence over the children and had used the family planning provisions not for the children's welfare, but for her own control. She nullified those provisions in the prenup and the trust documents. She granted me primary custody of Emma and Lucas, with Ryan getting standard visitation. She also ruled that Patricia's contact with the children would be supervised until she completed family therapy. But the victory came with a price. Patricia immediately dissolved the children's trust funds. $12 million each, gone. She also had them removed from the family will. Emma and Lucas would inherit nothing from the Morrison family fortune. Ryan was devastated. He said, "You just cost our children their entire future. For what? Your pride?" I said, "I gave them back their childhood, their right to choose who they want to be. Money isn't everything." Easy for you to say. You're not the one who has to tell them they could have been set for life. He was right, in a way. Emma and Lucas had lost generational wealth. They'd lost the security of knowing they'd never have to worry about money. They'd lost access to the best schools, the best connections, the best opportunities that Morrison money could buy. But they'd gained something too. They'd gained the right to be themselves, to choose their own paths, to not be controlled by a manipulative grandmother and her legal contracts. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. I got the house in Newton, which Ryan bought out as part of the settlement. I got spousal support for 5 years. I got my children. Ryan got visitation every other weekend and Wednesday nights. He also got to remain in his mother's good graces, still working at the family firm, still part of that world. Patricia never forgave me. She never forgave Claire either. Both of us were cut off from the family completely. Claire said it was worth it, that she should have stood up to Patricia years ago. Emma struggled for a while. She was angry at me for taking away her special status. She didn't understand why we couldn't live in a big house anymore, why she couldn't go to the exclusive private school, why grandmother wasn't in her life. But slowly, things got better. She made real friends at her new school. Friends who liked her for who she was, not because she was a Morrison. She discovered she loved soccer and art, things Patricia would never have allowed because they weren't appropriate for a Morrison girl. Lucas adjusted more easily. He was younger, less indoctrinated. He just wanted to play with trucks and watch cartoons and be a normal kid. Now, 3 years later, Emma is 10 and Lucas is 7. They're happy, healthy, normal kids. They see their dad regularly, and he's actually been better since the divorce. Away from Patricia's constant influence, he's remembered how to just be a father. Emma asked me recently, "Mom, do you regret it? Fighting grandmother? We could have been rich." I thought about it carefully before answering. "You are rich, sweetie. Maybe not in money, but in all the ways that matter. You're kind. You're smart. You're free to be whoever you want to be. That's worth more than any trust fund." She hugged me and said, "I'm glad you fought for us, even though I didn't understand it then." That made everything worth it. People ask me if I'd do it differently if I could go back. If I'd refuse to sign the prenup, walk away from Ryan before the wedding, protect myself better. Honestly, I don't know. Because if I'd done things differently, I wouldn't have Emma and Lucas. And despite everything, despite the pain and the legal battles and the loss of their inheritance, I can't regret having them. But I'll tell you what I do know. I know that no amount of money is worth giving someone else control over your children. I know that legal documents can be weapons in the wrong hands. I know that love isn't always enough, but it's the foundation everything else should be built on. And I know that when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Patricia showed me exactly who she was at that first meeting, calling me quaint, looking at me like I was beneath her. I just didn't want to see it. The hardest part now is knowing that Emma and Lucas will grow up without the financial security they could have had. When Emma wants to go to college, we'll be filling out financial aid forms instead of writing a check. When Lucas wants to start a business someday, he'll need loans, not trust fund money. But they'll also grow up knowing that their worth isn't tied to their bank account, that their value comes from who they are, not what family they were born into, that their mother loved them enough to fight for their right to choose their own path. Sometimes I see Patricia around town. Boston's not that big when you're in certain circles. She looks through me like I don't exist. I heard through the grapevine that she tells people I'm a cautionary tale, a gold digger who got what she deserved. Let her tell her story. I know the truth. The truth is that I signed a contract I didn't fully understand, and I paid the price. The truth is that I was naive and trusting and too in love to protect myself. The truth is that I lost my children's inheritance fighting for their freedom. But the truth is also that I won the only battle that really mattered. My kids are mine. Their futures are theirs to determine. And no contract, no matter how ironclad, can take that away. Would I warn other women in my situation? Absolutely. Read every document. Hire your own lawyer. Don't let love blind you to red flags. Don't sign away your rights or your children's rights, no matter how much you trust someone. Because the person you trust today might not be the person standing across from you in a courtroom tomorrow. And that piece of paper you signed without reading? It might just be the weapon someone uses to try to steal everything that matters from you. I got lucky. I found a loophole. I had help from Claire. I had a judge who saw through Patricia's manipulations. Not everyone will be that lucky. So if you're reading this, if you're about to sign a prenup or any legal document involving your future children, please get your own lawyer. Read every word. Understand every clause. Ask questions. Protect yourself and your kids. Because I can tell you from experience, fighting to get your rights back is 1,000 times harder than protecting them in the first place. My mother-in-law's insane marriage contract almost stole my children's inheritance. In the end, she did steal it, dissolved those trust funds out of spite when she lost control. But she didn't steal my children. And that's the only inheritance that really matters.